welcome back to Endeavor. We're going to take a look at the kettlebell swing, a series we like to look at for setting the kettlebell swing up, talk about a couple of easy pieces, or maybe not easy, they do take time to learn, simple though, ideas we like to use to approach the kettlebell swing. So I'm going to do a couple quick, show you how we would set up, go through a couple motion-wise, and then we'll break it down piece by piece. Okay, so here's a couple of swings, the way that we would go to look to set it up. So with the kettlebell swing, you'll see a lot of videos on the internet, different fields of thought, different presentations going into it. For us, we like to base a lot of what we're doing off keeping a good neutral spine, so good stability. That's where we work with our breathing and bracing patterns. Making sure we're using our legs, so that's where we talk about our foot loading positions, so that we can use the hamstrings, the glutes, good stable core, good lat activation to drive on the bell. We also understand that different body types are going to require different positions, or at least little tweaks in those positions, right? Previous history, maybe you have chronic back injury or something there that has a limitation of mobility, we can make some adjustments, okay? So for the most part with the kettlebell swing, what we're looking for is a big hamstring and glute activation. So generally how we'll start people is, we start them with a good morning. A good morning, I keep my legs relatively straight, my knees unlock, and my butt moves backwards. So notice that my hip is transferring backwards, my knees stay exactly where they're at, and then I push through the floor, pushing away the ground to drive my hips through, versus picking my chest up, locking my lower back out to accelerate that motion. So we want to make sure that our athletes are very comfortable sitting their hips backwards and then pushing their feet into the ground to make that driving motion with the hamstrings, with the glutes, and be able to maintain a stable core. If I can do this standing, we can start to work towards doing it weighted. Okay? If we have any issues, if we notice any rounding here just from a standing position without any weight, then we want to take some time, we want to break this position down a little bit more. So hips go back, push through the floor to drive the kettlebell moving forward. Okay, so that's piece number one. Once people can accomplish that relatively well, we're going to start playing around with the kettlebell deadlift to make sure they can do that under load. So my hips are going to go back, my knees are going to stay relatively straight, I'm going to grab onto my kettlebell, I'm going to push through the floor, squeeze my glutes, drive the floor away, and I drive through here. Okay, once that looks pretty good, now we want to start getting the accelerated movement. Okay, so we'll do a basic hand movement drill to start teaching how our hips fire and how it correlates with our hands. So if I'm standing here sideways with you, I'd end over like I'm in a kettlebell swing. I'm going to pull my hands into my hips. I want my hands nice and deep into the hips. For the most part, my forearms are going to be resting on my thighs, as opposed to drooping way down low here. So my forearms resting on my thighs. I'm going to press away from the floor. I'm going to let my hands extend to about head height. And then as my hands come back down, I'm going to allow them to push my hips back. So I'm learning the timing and the relationship between what my hands, in this case where the kettlebell would be at, are doing to then move my hips timing-wise, and we get good and adjusted here. Once we can do this drill pretty solid, then all of a sudden we're going to start to fire a little bit more so that we're teaching an accelerated movement, which is what we're going to need, especially as the bell starts to get heavier. Okay, if you can do pretty well with that, then we want to start introducing the kettlebell into the motion. All right, so our setup, once we have our structure of what the lift is going to look like, our setup is about a step behind the kettlebell. I want to create a good loaded position to start. Right here is where I'm going to take my breath. I'm going to make sure my feet are glued into the ground. I'm going to sit my hips back, making sure I maintain my stable spine, and I'm going to hold on to the kettlebell. Here I'm going to hike it, just like I would for a football, keeping it real close to my hips, and I'm going to stand up from that position. This is how we like to set up to create consistency in our kettlebell swing. I'm holding on to my kettlebell, hike back, fire the hips. As they come back down, I reset position, making sure I'm pressing my feet into the floor, keeping my brace nice and stable. And then when I go to finish, I'm going to place the kettlebell right back where it was before to create that same sequence. So that's an overshot of how we would approach the swing. Shows you a progression of drills you can work to get a little bit into it, and then gives you an idea of how to set up for consistency. So instead of picking the kettlebell up, starting a swing this way, we like to start on the floor, get that nice hiking motion, allows us to set ourselves up in a stable position and then focus on our breathing and our positions from there. Now, if you've had issues in the past, maybe with lower back, things along those lines, this hiked position here, essentially long story short, the more I bend over, the more likely I'm putting pressure on my lower back. So we can make a minor adjustment to let those knees come just a little bit more forward. Now, negation acknowledge, I don't want to turn this into a squat. So I'm not squatting down, squatting up. I do want my hips driving forward. But for some athletes, we're going to set them up for a better brace position and better stability in their spine if we allow the knees to come forward just a little bit more. So I'm going to show you 3 swings with my hips far back, and then 3 swings with my knees just slightly bent up into the front, so you can see the difference between the two. Kettlebells out in front, good setup, hips back. That's 3. And that's 3. Okay, so you can see the knees come back a little farther in one, and they come just a little bit more forward, takes a little bit of pressure off the back, and allows me to still do a functional, efficient swing, and allows me to put myself in a position to potentially stabilize better for my spine. So that's a little look at the kettlebell swing, a couple of drills we do to set it up, things that may take away for you. There's a lot that can go into the kettlebell swing, a lot of it right out of the gate for us, focusing from here down, focus on our timing, focus on our setup, okay? We can talk about lats, how high, when do I go overhead, all that type fun stuff. This is a great place to start for your kettlebell journey. See you guys next time.